Shadows of yesterday. The rain fell in merciless sheets, soaking Prisha to the bone as she hurried down Mumbai's crowded streets. Her small backpack contained everything she had managed to grab: some clothes, her identification, and the meager savings she'd hidden from Vikram over the past year. 6,000 rupees wouldn't get her far, but it was better than staying another night under his roof, enduring another moment of his possessive rage. Prisha! His voice cut through the downpour, sending ice through her veins. Somehow he had tracked her to this busy market district. Stop running, you ungrateful. She didn't wait to hear the rest. Weaving through bewildered shoppers taking shelter under storefront awnings, Prisha clutched her backpack tighter and ran faster, her wet sandals slipping dangerously on the slick pavement. 3 years of emotional imprisonment had taught her one thing: Vikram Malhotra never made empty threats. The rain blurred her vision as she rounded a corner too quickly. Her foot caught on an uneven section of sidewalk, sending her tumbling forward. Prisha braced for impact, for the pain of hitting concrete, but it never came. Instead, strong hands caught her mid-fall, steadying her against a solid chest. The world stopped spinning, and Prisha found herself looking up into the most intense brown eyes she'd ever seen. Are you all right? The man's voice was deep, concerned. His expensive suit was now partially soaked where she had collided with him, yet he seemed unbothered by this fact. I'm sorry, Prisha stammered, trying to regain her footing. I need to go. Prisha. Vikram's voice was closer now. You think you can just leave? After everything I've done for you? The stranger's expression shifted as he glanced over her shoulder, taking in the situation with remarkable speed. Without releasing her arm, he guided her toward the entrance of a gleaming high-rise building. Come inside. Security won't let him follow. Too frightened to question this unexpected assistance, Prisha allowed herself to be led through glass doors that whispered open at their approach. The elegant lobby was a stark contrast to the chaos outside: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and uniformed staff who straightened at the sight of her companion. Mr. Singhania, the concierge acknowledged with a respectful nod. Shall I call security about the gentleman shouting outside? Please do, Rajan, and have someone bring towels to my office. The man, Mr. Singhania, guided Prisha toward a private elevator, swiping a card that illuminated the button for the top floor. Only when the doors closed behind them did Prisha realize she had traded one unknown situation for another. She pressed herself against the elevator wall, her heart racing. Who are you? Why are you helping me? His expression softened. Advik Singhania. This is my hotel, the Akash Grand, and I'm helping because you clearly needed it. He maintained a respectful distance, seeming to understand her wariness. That man outside, is he your ex? Prisha said firmly, water dripping from her clothes onto the elevator's polished floor. As of 3 hours ago, Advik nodded, asking no further questions as the elevator ascended. When the doors opened, they revealed a tastefully decorated office with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Mumbai's skyline, now veiled by rain. A woman with a kind face appeared almost immediately with fluffy white towels. Mr. Singhania, your 4 o'clock call to reschedule due to the weather. Thank you, Divya. Advik took the towels, handing one to Prisha. Could you also bring some hot chai and arrange for a guest room in the executive wing? Prisha found her voice. I can't accept. Just for tonight, Advik said gently. No strings attached. Tomorrow, if you want to leave, my driver will take you wherever you need to go. As Divya discreetly withdrew, Prisha studied the man before her, tall with broad shoulders and thoughtful eyes that seemed to see right through her defenses. His watch alone probably cost more than she made in 6 months at the accounting firm where she worked, or used to work, before Vikram had convinced her to quit. Why would you offer a room to a complete stranger? She asked, suspicion edging her. Voice Advik's smile was slight but genuine. Because 6 years ago I was caught in a different kind of storm. Someone offered me shelter when I needed it most. He gestured to a comfortable chair. Rest. Drink some tea. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. For the first time that day, Prisha felt the knot in her chest loosen slightly. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but here, in this unexpected sanctuary, she allowed herself to breathe. Little did she know that this moment of kindness, this chance encounter, on a rain-soaked Mumbai street, would change the course of her life forever. Walls of glass. 2 weeks had passed since the rainstorm that brought Prisha to the Ayakash Grand. What was meant to be one night's sanctuary had evolved into something unexpected when Advik had offered her a job after learning about her accounting background. "We need someone to audit our purchasing procedures," he had explained the morning after her arrival, as they sat in the hotel's private executive dining room. "The position comes with staff accommodation. Consider it while you decide your next steps." Now, Prisha sat at her desk in the hotel's administrative offices, surrounded by spreadsheets and invoices. The position was perfect, challenging enough to keep her mind occupied and far removed from the hotel's public areas where Vikram might find her if he was still searching. "Working through lunch again?" Prisha looked up to find Nandini, the hotel's event coordinator, leaning against her doorframe. With her designer clothes and effortless confidence, Nandini had initially intimidated Prisha. But beneath the polished exterior was a warmth that had quickly made her Prisha's first real friend at the Akash. "I'm almost finished reconciling these vendor payments," Prisha replied, stretching her arms above her head. "There are some interesting discrepancies in the liquor inventory." Nandini rolled her eyes. "Thrilling. Meanwhile, I'm planning the biggest charity gala of the season and you're choosing spreadsheets over lunch. Come on." "The staff cafeteria has butter chicken today." As they walked through the hotel's service corridors, Prisha found herself scanning faces, a habit she couldn't shake. Nandini noticed. "He hasn't been back," she said quietly. "Security has his photo at all entrances." Prisha nodded, grateful, yet embarrassed. She hadn't told anyone the full story, but Advik had ensured security knew enough to keep Vikram away. "Speaking of men who leave an impression," Nandini continued, her tone lightening, "the boss has been asking about you. Mr. Singhania is just checking on his investment." Prisha deflected, ignoring the warmth that spread through her chest. "I found 3 suppliers overcharging us by nearly 15%. Yes, I'm sure it's your accounting wizardry that has him stopping by your office twice this week," Nandini teased. "It couldn't possibly be those big brown eyes or the fact that you're the only person who doesn't fawn all over him. He's my employer, Nandini, and I'm not looking for complications." Her friend's expression softened. "Not all men are like your ex-Prish. Some are actually decent human beings." Prisha remained silent as they entered the cafeteria. She knew Advik Singhania was different from Vikram. That much had been clear from their first encounter. But different didn't mean safe. She had built her walls carefully, brick by emotional brick, and she wasn't ready to dismantle them for anyone, especially not someone whose world was so far removed from her own. Later that afternoon, Prisha was deep in concentration when a knock on her office door startled her. Advik stood in the doorway, his usual tailored suit replaced by more casual attire, dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt that made his shoulders appear even broader. "Do you have a moment?" he asked, his expression unreadable. "Of course, Mr. Singhania." Prisha straightened, professional mask firmly in place. "Advik," he corrected, as he had numerous times before. "I wanted to personally invite you to our charity gala next Saturday. The Ayakash Foundation raises money for education programs in underserved communities." I'm not sure I should attend," Prisha stammered. "I'll be more useful behind the scenes helping Nandini with the logistics." Advik stepped further into her office, his gaze direct. "You've been hiding in this office for 2 weeks, Prisha. You're doing excellent work, but—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Life doesn't stop because someone tried to control yours." The accuracy of his observation struck a nerve. "I'm not hiding," she said defensively. "I'm being cautious. There's a difference between caution and fear." His voice was gentle but firm. "The gala will have tight security. You'll be perfectly safe." "Is this a request from my employer?" Prisha asked, her chin lifting slightly. Something flickered in Advik's eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or admiration at her challenge. Consider it a strong recommendation from someone who once needed to be reminded that not every storm lasts forever. Before she could respond, his phone rang. Checking the screen, he sighed. I need to take this. Think about the gala, Prisha. You belong there as much as anyone else. With a slight nod, he left her office, already speaking into his phone. Prisha leaned back in her chair, unsettled by the encounter. It wasn't just Advik's invitation that disturbed her equilibrium. It was the way he seemed to see past her carefully constructed facade, the way his presence made her feel simultaneously vulnerable and secure. That evening, Prisha stood at the window of her staff apartment, a modest but comfortable one-bedroom unit in the hotel's residential wing. From the 12th floor, she could see the sprawling city lights of Mumbai, a tapestry of dreams and heartbreaks spread out before her. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know where you are. We need to talk. You can't hide. Forever. Her hands trembled as she deleted the message. Somehow, Vikram had found her number. The walls she had thought would protect her suddenly seemed as transparent as glass. A soft knock at her door made her jump. Through the peephole, she saw Advik standing in the hallway holding a folder. Sorry to disturb you, he said when she opened the door, keeping a careful distance between them. I thought you might want to see the final numbers you helped us save. The board was impressed. Prisha accepted the folder, noticing a small business, card paper clipped to the front, a therapist specializing in relationship trauma. She looked up, a question in her eyes. My sister's card, Advik explained quietly. She helps people who've been through difficult situations. No pressure, just an option. The simple gesture, thoughtful, respectful of her boundaries yet acknowledging her unspoken pain, made something shift inside Prisha. For the first time in years, she felt seen without feeling exposed. The gala, she said suddenly. I'll attend. Advik's smile was brief but genuine. Good. And Prisha? Whatever storm you're weathering, you don't have to face it alone anymore. As she closed the door behind him, Prisha pressed her hand against the cool wood. Beyond her apartment, beyond the safety of the Akash Grand, Vikram was waiting. But here, within these walls, something new was taking root, something that felt dangerously like hope. Whispers of truth. The week leading up to the charity gala passed in a flurry of preparation. Prisha threw herself into work, auditing the hotel's financial records by day and helping Nandini with event logistics by night. The constant activity kept her mind from dwelling on Vikram's threatening message, though she had taken the precaution of changing her phone number the very next morning. You can't avoid the dress situation any longer, Nandini declared on Friday afternoon, appearing in Prisha's doorway with determination in her eyes. The gala is tomorrow, and you can't wear your audit reports as an evening gown. Prisha looked up from her computer with a grimace. I was thinking of wearing the black dress I arrived in. The one you ran away in? Nandini raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. Absolutely not. This is a new chapter, which calls for a new dress. Lucky for you, my cousin owns a boutique and owes me a favor. Hours later, Prisha stood before a mirror in Nandini's apartment, barely recognizing her reflection. The emerald green gown hugged her curves before flowing gracefully to the floor, its simplicity elegant rather than ostentatious. See? Nandini said triumphantly, adjusting the thin gold belt at Prisha's waist. Even financial analysts can look like goddesses when properly styled. Prisha smiled despite herself. It's beautiful, Nandini, but no buts, her friend interrupted. For one night, allow yourself to be more than your past, more than your job. Nandini's expression softened. The woman in that mirror deserves to shine, Prish. As Nandini continued styling her hair, Prisha's thoughts drifted to Advik. They had maintained a professional distance since his visit to her apartment, though she occasionally caught him watching her across conference rooms with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. There was something in his gaze, not possessiveness like Vikram's, but something equally powerful. Something that made her simultaneously want to run away and step closer. You're thinking about him, aren't you? Nandini asked. meeting Prisha's eyes in the mirror. Who? Don't play innocent. The handsome hotel magnate who rescued you in the rain and checks the security logs every morning to make sure your ex hasn't been spotted near the property. Prisha turned in surprise. He does what? Nandini smiled knowingly. Rohan in security mentioned it. Advik has personally reviewed every security protocol in the hotel since you arrived. She placed her hands on Prisha's shoulders. He respects your boundaries, Prish, but he cares. More than I think he intended to. The revelation settled in Prisha's chest like a small warm flame. Before she could respond, Nandini's phone rang. After a brief conversation, she hung up with a frown. That was the florist. There's an issue with tomorrow's centerpieces. I need to handle this. She squeezed Prisha's hand. We'll finish your transformation tomorrow, 7 o'clock sharp. After Nandini left, Prisha carefully hung up the emerald dress and changed back into her casual clothes. Instead of returning directly to her apartment, she found herself wandering through the hotel's rooftop garden, a serene space usually reserved for VIP guests, but accessible to staff during off-peak hours. The Mumbai skyline glittered below, stars emerging in the twilight sky above. She hadn't expected anyone else to be there, which is why she startled when a familiar voice spoke from the shadows. The city looks different from up here, doesn't it? Advik stepped into view, his tie loosened and jacket missing, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. More possibilities than problems. Mr. Singhania. Advik, she corrected herself. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not intruding. I come here to think. He gestured to the empty space beside him at the railing. Something on your mind? Prisha hesitated before joining him, maintaining a careful distance. Nandini told me you've been checking security logs, making sure Vikram doesn't get near the hotel. Advik's expression remained neutral, though something flickered in his eyes. Does that bother you? No, she admitted. But it makes me wonder why you're going to such lengths for someone you barely know. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sounds of traffic below and the gentle rustle of rooftop plants in the evening breeze. My younger sister, Annika, the therapist whose card I gave you, was in a relationship similar to what I suspect you experienced, Advik finally said, his voice low. By the time our family realized what was happening, she had lost herself entirely. It took years for her to rebuild. He turned to face Prisha fully. So no, I don't know you well, but I recognize the look in your eyes. The vigilance. The careful way you maintain distance. Prisha swallowed hard, unprepared for his honesty. Is your sister okay now? A small smile softened his features. She's thriving, leading support groups, helping others find their way back to themselves. His gaze held hers steadily. There's life after people like Vikram, Prisha. The sound of her ex's name on Advik's lips sent a chill through her. What did security tell you about him? Only what they needed to know, that he's potentially dangerous and not welcome on the property. Advik's expression grew serious. But I sense there's more to the story. Perhaps it was the safety of the twilight, or the weeks of carrying her secret alone. But Prisha found herself speaking. I met Vikram at a business conference 3 years ago. He was charming, successful, everything I thought I wanted. She gripped the railing tighter. The control started small, suggestions about my clothes, my friends. Then came the accusations, the constant checking of my phone, my whereabouts. Advik remained silent, giving her space to continue. He convinced me to quit my job, said we didn't need 2 incomes. I became isolated, dependent. When I finally decided to leave, her voice caught. He threatened to destroy my professional reputation, to tell everyone I'd embezzled from my former company. The night air felt suddenly cold against her skin. The night I ran, he had my passport in his hand, said we were moving to Singapore for his new job. That's when I knew I'd disappear completely if I didn't leave right then. And you ran straight into a rainstorm. Advik finished softly. And then into you. Prisha agreed, meeting his gaze. Quite literally. Something unspoken passed between them, a current of understanding deeper than sympathy. He found my number, she admitted. Last week. Said he knows where I am. Advik's posture stiffened. Why didn't you tell me? Because I've spent 3 years with someone controlling my every move. I needed to handle it myself. She straightened her shoulders. I changed my number, reported the harassment to the police. I'm not running anymore, Advik. The pride in his eyes was unmistakable. Good. But you're not alone in this fight either. He hesitated before continuing. Tomorrow night, at the gala, there will be press, photographers. If Vikram is monitoring the hotel, he might see you there. I know, Prisha said, surprising herself with her steadiness. But I can't hide forever. Advik nodded, respect evident in his expression. As they stood side by side, looking out over the city, Prisha felt something shift between them, walls thinning, trust tentatively taking root. My turn for a question, she said after a comfortable silence. Nandini mentioned you've never brought a date to these charity events. Why is that? A shadow crossed his face. The hotel business means constantly being in the public eye. I learned the hard way that not everyone can separate the man from the wealth. His jaw tightened slightly. My ex-fiancée, Tanvi, ended up being more interested in the Singhania name than the person behind it. I'm sorry, Prisha said softly. Advik shrugged, but she could see the lingering hurt. It taught me to be cautious, to value authenticity. His eyes found hers again. To recognize it when I see it. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. For a dangerous moment, Prisha found herself wondering what it would be like to close the distance between them, to discover if his lips were as warm as his eyes. The moment was broken by the chime of Advik's phone. Checking it, he sighed. Board members arriving early for pre-gala meetings. He straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. Will you be all right? Prisha nodded, grateful for the interruption that prevented her from doing something impulsive. I'll see you tomorrow night. As Advik turned to leave, he paused. Prisha, thank you for trusting me with your story. After he disappeared through the rooftop door, Prisha remained, watching as the city lights grew brighter against the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, for the first time in years, the whispered truth of her past felt less like a burden and more like a weight finally lifted from her shoulders. Unknown to both of them, across the city, Vikram scrolled through a society page announcement about the upcoming Akash Foundation charity gala, his finger tracing the name of the hotel's founder, Advik Singhania. With calculated precision, he opened his email and purchased a last-minute ticket to the event. Storm's return. The grand ballroom of the Akash Grand Hotel glittered with elegant decorations and Mumbai's elite in their finest attire. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over silk-draped tables adorned with the once troublesome centerpieces, now perfect arrangements of white orchids and twinkling lights. A string quartet played softly in the corner, as waitstaff moved efficiently between guests with trays of champagne. Prisha stood at the entrance, one hand nervously smoothing the emerald fabric of her gown. Despite Nandini's expert styling, loose curls cascading down her back, subtle makeup enhancing her features, she felt exposed, vulnerable. Breathe, Nandini whispered beside her, resplendent in a deep burgundy dress. You look stunning. Now, put on your eye audit balance sheets for fun face and let's make an entrance. With a grateful smile, Prisha stepped into the ballroom. She had spent the day helping coordinate last-minute details, but seeing the event in full swing, hundreds of Mumbai's most influential citizens gathered to support education initiatives, filled her with unexpected pride. This was part of Advik's legacy, a reflection of values that went beyond his business success. Speaking of Advik, her eyes found him across the room, engaged in conversation with an elderly couple. His custom tuxedo emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, the confident line of his posture. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, their eyes meeting across the crowded space. The small smile that curved his lips sent a flutter through her chest. He excused himself from his conversation and began making his way toward her, navigating the crowd with practiced ease. "You came," he said when he reached her, his voice warm with approval. "I said I would," Prisha replied, fighting the urge to fidget under his appreciative gaze. "You look beautiful," he said simply, the sincerity in his tone making the compliment feel profound rather than perfunctory. Before she could respond, Nandini cleared her throat dramatically. "I'll just go check on the auction items," she said, with a knowing smile disappearing into the crowd. "Would you like a tour?" Advik offered, extending his arm. "There are some people I'd like you to meet." The next hour passed in a whirlwind as Advik introduced Prisha to Foundation board members, business associates, and old friends. To her surprise, he presented her not merely as a hotel employee, but as the financial genius who saved us from vendor overcharging and revolutionized our purchasing system. "You're exaggerating my contributions," she murmured as they moved between groups. "I never exaggerate about business," he replied with a hint of playfulness, especially not the business of recognizing talent. As the formal dinner portion of the evening began, Prisha found herself seated at Advik's table alongside major donors and foundation leaders. The conversation flowed easily, with topics ranging from education reform to art preservation. For the first time in years, Prisha felt intellectually engaged, respected for her mind rather than criticized for her opinions. When Advik rose to deliver the keynote address, his hand briefly squeezed her shoulder, a gesture so natural it seemed they had known each other for years rather than weeks. From the podium, he spoke passionately about educational access, sharing stories of children whose lives had been transformed by the Foundation's work. "Opportunity shouldn't be determined by circumstance," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. "Everyone deserves the chance to rewrite their story." Prisha felt his words resonate deep within her. Wasn't that what she was doing herself? Rewriting her own story, one careful day at a time? After dinner, as the auction began, Advik leaned close to whisper, "Would you join me on the terrace for a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss." The terrace offered a welcome respite from the crowded ballroom. Fairy lights twined around potted trees created a magical atmosphere against the backdrop of Mumbai's nightscape. "You've done remarkable work tonight," Advik said, maintaining a respectful distance despite the intimacy of the setting. "The board mentioned the financial overview you prepared for potential donors. 3 of our biggest contributors increased their pledges as a result." Prisha felt a surge of professional pride. "I'm glad I could help." "It's more than help, Prisha, it's—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "You've brought something to the Akash that was missing. Clarity, purpose." The intensity in his eyes made her pulse quicken. They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. "I have a proposition for you," Advik finally said. "A permanent position as our financial director. The current one is retiring next month, and you're more qualified than most of the external candidates we've interviewed." Prisha began, stunned by the offer. "You don't have to answer now," he added quickly. "Take time to consider it. The position includes an apartment upgrade, equity options." "It's not about the compensation," she interrupted gently. "It's about—" She trailed off, unsure how to articulate the complexity of their situation. Working directly with him, seeing him daily, it would make maintaining professional boundaries increasingly difficult. Understanding dawned in his expression. "This isn't just about the job offer, is it?" Before she could respond, the terrace door opened and Nandini appeared, her expression tense. "Advik, there's a situation inside. Security is handling it, but—" "What kind of situation?" he asked, immediately alert. Nandini's eyes flicked to Prisha apologetically. "A guest making a scene, claiming to be Vikram," Prisha whispered, her body going cold despite the warm evening air. Advik's posture changed instantly, protective energy radiating from him. "Where?" "Near the auction tables. Rohan from security is detaining him, but he's demanding to speak with Prisha. Says he has information about financial irregularities at her former company. The threat Vikram had held over her for so long, now being wielded publicly." Prisha felt her hard-won confidence begin to crumble. "He can't do anything to you. Advik said firmly, reading her expression. Your former employers have already verified your exemplary record. We checked before offering you the audit position. You investigated me? Prisha asked, momentarily distracted from her panic. Standard procedure for financial positions, he explained, not looking remotely apologetic. Which means we know Vikram's claims are baseless. He has no power here, Prisha. Despite his reassurance, her hands trembled. I need to face him. End this. You don't owe him anything, Advik said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Let security remove him. If I don't confront him now, he'll keep coming back. Prisha straightened her shoulders, gathering courage from somewhere deep within. I've been running for weeks. I'm done. After a moment of silent assessment, Advik nodded. All right, but not alone. He offered his arm once more, this time as much for support as courtesy. As they re-entered the ballroom, Prisha was acutely aware of curious glances from guests who had noticed the disturbance. Near the auction display, Vikram stood flanked by 2 security officers, his expression a familiar mask of righteous indignation. He looked smaller than she remembered, his tailored suit and styled hair no longer intimidating, merely the trappings of someone desperate to appear important. There she is, Vikram called out, his voice carrying across the now hushed room. Ask her about the financial discrepancies at Mehta and Associates. Ask her why she really left. Prisha felt Advik tense beside her but was surprised by her own calm as she approached her ex. Hello, Vikram. You think you can just walk away, start over like nothing happened? Vikram's eyes narrowed as he took in her appearance, her proximity to Advik. Found yourself a wealthy protector, I see. Does he know who you really are? Yes, Advik answered before she could, his voice cold. We know exactly who Prisha is, a brilliant financial analyst who exposed vendor fraud within weeks of joining our team, a valued colleague respected by everyone at the Akash. Vikram sneered. She's using you, just like she used me. She'll take your money and… That's enough, Prisha interrupted, finding strength in Advik's unwavering support and her own truth. We both know there were no financial irregularities, Vikram. We both know the only thing I took when I left was what belonged to me. My freedom. You're nothing without me. Vikram hissed, his composure cracking. I made you. No, Prisha said, quietly, the realization crystallizing as she spoke. You tried to unmake me, there's a difference. With a nod to the security officers, she added, Please escort Mr. Malhotra out, and ensure the foundation keeps his donation. Children's education is too important to refuse funds, regardless of their source. The subtle gasps and murmurs of approval from onlookers registered dimly as she watched security lead a sputtering Vikram toward the exit. It was only when he was gone that she realized she was still gripping Advik's arm, her nails leaving half-moon imprints in his sleeve. I'm sorry, she whispered, loosening her hold. Don't be, he replied, covering her hand with his. That was the most dignified handling of a crisis I've ever witnessed. As the crowd dispersed and the event resumed, Nandini appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. I think you both need this, she said, her eyes shining with admiration. Prish, that was magnificent. Prisha accepted the glass but didn't drink, overwhelmed by the evening's emotions. I should go. People are still watching, and tomorrow there will be gossip. Stay, Advik said softly. Finish what we started. This is your victory, Prisha. Don't let him steal it. The string quartet began playing again and couples moved toward the dance floor. Advik set down his untouched champagne and extended his hand. Dance with me? Something about his expression, hopeful yet prepared for rejection, made Prisha's decision easy. She placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her to the dance floor. As they moved together to the music, his hand respectfully at her waist, hers on his shoulder, Prisha felt the last pieces of Vikram's control dissolving. Here in Advik's arms, by choice rather than circumstance, she was finally writing her own story. About your job offer, she said, looking up at him. I'd like to accept it. Surprise and pleasure lit his features. What changed your mind? Tonight made me realize something. I've been so focused on what I was running from, I haven't considered what I might be running toward. Her eyes held his steadily. I'm not afraid of challenges, Advik, professional or personal. The implications of her words hung between them as they continued to dance, their steps bringing them incrementally closer with each turn. When the music ended, neither moved away. Prisha, Advik began, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I want to be clear about something. The job offer stands regardless of anything else that might develop between us. You've earned it on merit, alone. I know, she said simply, trusting the truth of it. As guests began departing and the evening wound down, Prisha felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The confrontation with Vikram had drained her, yet facing him, standing her ground had released something long trapped inside her. Later, as she and Advik stood at the entrance bidding farewell to the last guests, a hotel staff member approached with an envelope. This was left for Ms. Prisha, he said, handing it to her. Inside was a handwritten note. This isn't over. What you took from me, I'll take from you. But the paper trembled in her hand. Just when she thought she was free, Vikram had found a way to cast a shadow over her victory. Advik read the note over her shoulder, his expression darkening. We'll increase security. File a restraining order first thing tomorrow. But Prisha was already shaking her head, a terrible clarity washing over her. Don't you see? As long as I stay here, he has a target. The hotel, the foundation, you all could be damaged by his vendetta. So you're considering running again, Advik said, a statement rather than a question. It would be simpler, safer for everyone. Advik's jaw tightened. Simpler, perhaps, but not better. He took her hands in his, the note crushed between their palms. Prisha, I've spent years building walls to protect myself from people who only saw my wealth. Then you crashed into my life, the one person who kept trying to maintain professional distance rather than leverage a personal connection. His honesty disarmed her. Advik, let me finish, he said gently. Tonight I watched you face your worst fear with extraordinary courage. Don't let this threat undo that victory. His eyes searched hers. Stay. Not just for the job. Not just for me. For yourself. The weight of the decision pressed on her. Risk staying and potentially bringing trouble to the Akash, to Advik, to everything she'd come to care about. Or run once more, sacrificing this new beginning for the illusion of safety? As the night deepened around them, the answer remained elusive, suspended between fear and hope, between past and possibility. Donna, after darkness, morning light filtered through the curtains of Prisha's apartment, finding her still awake, seated cross-legged on her bed. Vikram's threatening note lay on the nightstand, its power diminished by hours of clear-eyed contemplation. 3 years of her life had been sacrificed to fear. First, the slow-growing fear within her relationship, then the desperate fear that drove her escape. Last night, standing before Vikram at the gala, she had finally faced that fear directly. And now, this note represented a choice. Continue living in reaction to fear, or start living in pursuit of something else entirely. Soft knock at her door broke her reverie. Opening it, she found Nandini balancing a tray with 2 coffee cups and a small bag from the hotel's bakery. You look terrible, her friend announced, brushing past her into the apartment. Though I expected worse after the gala drama. Here, caffeine and carbs, the traditional post-crisis breakfast. Prisha accepted the coffee gratefully. I didn't sleep. Thinking about Vikram's threat or Advik's heartfelt plea to stay? Don't look surprised, I was supervising cleanup nearby. Nandini settled onto Prisha's couch. So, what have you decided? I don't know, Prisha admitted. Logically, leaving makes sense. Vikram is vindictive. He could cause problems for the hotel, for Advik's reputation. Oh, please, Nandini interrupted, rolling her eyes. Advik Singhania survived a hostile takeover attempt by one of India's most ruthless business families. He navigated the hotel, industry's worst crisis during the pandemic, without laying off a single staff member. He can handle one bitter ex-boyfriend with delusions of importance. Put that way, Prisha's concerns did seem somewhat overblown. Still, it's not just about what Advik can handle, it's about what I want my life to be. She sipped her coffee thoughtfully. For years, my decisions were reactions to Vikram. I don't want to keep making choices based on him, whether I'm running toward or away. Nandini studied her with unexpected seriousness. Then what do you want, Prish? If Vikram weren't a factor at all? The question hung between them as Prisha considered possibilities that had seemed unimaginable just weeks ago. A challenging career, financial independence, friends who supported her growth rather than limiting it. And Advik, with his quiet strength, his respect for her boundaries, his belief in her capabilities even when she doubted herself. I want to stay, she said finally, the truth of it settling in her chest like a stone dropping through water, creating ripples of certainty. Not because I'm afraid to leave, but because everything I want to build is here. Well, thank goodness, Nandini said with exaggerated relief. Because I've already started planning our next girls' night and it would be terribly inconvenient if you disappeared. Prisha laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. I should talk to Advik. Definitely, Nandini agreed, standing to leave. But maybe shower first? Emotional epiphanies are wonderful, but they're better delivered without yesterday's mascara under your eyes. After Nandini left, Prisha took her advice, letting hot water wash away the lingering tension of the previous night. As steam filled the bathroom, her mind cleared. She would accept Advik's job offer officially. She would file the restraining order against Vikram, and she would see where this undeniable connection with Advik might lead, approaching it not with fear, but with cautious hope. Later that morning, freshly dressed in a simple blue sundress, a weekend departure from her usual work attire, Prisha made her way to Advik's office. His assistant, Divya, greeted her with a warm smile. He's just finishing a call, Divya said. You can go right in when he's done. Through the partially open door, Prisha could hear Advik's voice, unusually sharp. I don't care what it costs, he was saying. This is non-negotiable, Rahul. If he comes within 50 meters of the hotel or her apartment building, I want to know immediately. Prisha's breath caught. He was arranging additional security because of Vikram's threat, going beyond what any employer would reasonably do for an employee. The call ended, and after a moment she knocked gently on the doorframe. Advik looked up, fatigue evident in the shadows beneath his eyes, though his expression brightened at the sight of her. Prisha, he said, rising from his desk. I was going to call you later today, about the security arrangements. I heard, she admitted. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. His tone left no room for argument. Your safety isn't optional, Prisha. She entered his office fully, closing the door behind her. I've made a decision. About the job offer. About staying. Wariness crept into his expression as though he was preparing himself for disappointment. And? I'm staying, she said simply. I'm accepting the financial director position, filing the restraining order against Vikram, and... She paused, gathering courage, seeing where this path leads. The relief that washed over his features was quickly tempered with caution. Are you certain? Last night you seemed convinced that leaving was safer. It probably is safer, she acknowledged. But I'm tired of making decisions based on fear. I want to make them based on hope. Advik moved around his desk but stopped short of approaching her directly, still giving her space to set the boundaries of their interaction. Hope for what exactly? The directness of his question demanded equal honesty. For a life where I'm valued for my mind, not controlled for my obedience. For work that challenges me. She hesitated, then continued. For the possibility of connection without possession. Something shifted in Advik's expression. The careful restraint. He had maintained giving way to unmistakable longing. "Prisha," he said, her name almost a plea on his lips. This time, she was the one who closed the distance between them, stopping just short of touch. "I need you to understand something. I'm not staying because of you. I'm staying because of me, because this is where I can become the person I want to be. You're a part of that future, I hope, but you're not the reason for it." "I wouldn't want to be," he responded quietly. "The woman who stood up to Vikram last night doesn't need a reason outside herself. She's more than enough on her own." His understanding, so different from Vikram's constant need to be central to her existence, released the last knot of tension in Prisha's chest. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "But being enough on my own doesn't mean I want to be alone," she added softly. The touch of their intertwined hands seemed to break something open between them. Advik's free hand came up to gently cup her cheek, his thumb tracing the curve of her jawline with reverent care. "May I?" he whispered, his eyes searching hers for permission. In answer, Prisha rose slightly on her toes, bringing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened as years of protective walls crumbled for them both. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer, while her hands found their way to his shoulders, then his hair. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Advik rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since you nearly knocked me over in the rain." Prisha laughed softly. "I had more pressing concerns at the time." "And now?" he asked, his tone light but his eyes serious. "Now I have new concerns," she replied honestly. "Falling for my boss being chief among them." Advik stepped back slightly, still holding her hands. "I've been thinking about that. The board would approve a modified reporting structure. You could report directly to the CFO instead of me. Complete professional autonomy." The fact that he had already considered this, that he was prepared to adjust his own company's structure to ensure her independence, spoke volumes. This was a man who understood that love wasn't about possession but partnership. "One day at a time," Prisha suggested. "We don't have to figure everything out immediately." "Agreed," Advik said, bringing her hand to his lips for a brief kiss. "Although there is one thing I'd like to establish right away." "What's that?" His eyes held hers steadily. "That whatever storm comes next, and there will be storms, Prisha, we face it together. No more running, either of us." The promise in his words matched the certainty in her heart. "Together," she agreed. 3 months. Later, Prisha stood in the same rooftop garden where she and Advik had first begun to lower their defenses. Mumbai sprawled before her, no longer a city of shadows and hiding places, but of possibilities and new beginnings. Behind her, the door opened, and Advik appeared, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "Celebrating?" she asked, accepting one. "Among other things," he replied with a smile, joining her at the railing. "The foundation received final approval for the rural education centers today. Construction begins next month." "That's wonderful," Prisha said sincerely. As financial director, she had helped secure the funding for this expansion of the Akash Foundation's work, a project that would bring educational opportunities to children in remote villages. "There's more," Advik continued. "Vikram's company transferred him to their Singapore office last week. Apparently, his personal conflicts were becoming a liability. The news should have brought relief, but Prisha was surprised to find she felt nothing but mild interest. Vikram had shrunk in, her mind becoming merely a chapter in her past rather than a shadow over her future. "Good for him," she said simply. "Singapore is lovely this time of year." Advik's laugh was warm as he pulled her into his arms. "You continue to amaze me, Prisha Sharma. 3 months ago, the mention of his name made you tremble. Now you're wishing him pleasant weather." "I've had more important things to focus on," she replied, relaxing into his embrace. The past 3 months had been transformative, establishing herself in her new role, building a life independent of both Vikram's control and Advik's protection, while simultaneously allowing their relationship to deepen naturally. There had been challenges, of course. Moments when old fears resurfaced, when trust felt risky, when the weight of past trauma threatened to overwhelm present joy. But each time, they had faced these storms together. Advik with his steady patience, Prisha with her growing confidence. I received an interesting invitation today, she mentioned casually. The Women's Business Council wants me to speak at their annual conference about financial independence and rebuilding after controlling relationships. Pride shone in Advik's eyes. You should do it. Your story could help others find their way out. Our story, she corrected gently. I wouldn't be here without that rainstorm, without you catching me when I fell. You would have found your way, he said with absolute certainty. Maybe not to the Akash, maybe not to me, but to yourself, Prisha. That strength was always within you. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson as they stood together. Two people who had each been running from connection for different reasons, now finding sanctuary in the very thing they had feared. Do you remember what you said to me that first night? Prisha asked, turning in his arms to face him fully. When I asked why you were helping a complete stranger? Advik smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I said someone once offered me shelter when I needed it most. You never told me who that someone was, she prompted. His expression softened with memory. My grandfather. When my first major business venture failed spectacularly and I lost everything, he didn't lecture or bail me out. He simply gave me a place to stay while I rebuilt, taught me that true strength isn't in never falling but in rising each time you fall. He sounds wise, Prisha said, leaning into his touch. He would have adored you, Advik replied, his voice warm with certainty. Almost as much as I do. The words, those three specific words, had not yet been spoken between them. Both understood the weight they carried, the promise they represented. Both had been hurt by false versions of love before, but standing there in the golden light of sunset, in the very place where truth had first begun to replace fear, Prisha felt the last of her hesitation dissolve. I love you, Advik, she said simply, the words feeling both momentous and natural on her lips. Not for catching me when I fell, but for showing me how to stand on my own. His arms tightened around her as he lowered his forehead to rest against hers, his voice thick with emotion. And I love you, Prisha. Not despite your scars, but including them. Every part of the woman you fought to become. As twilight settled over Mumbai, wrapping the city in deepening shades of blue and purple, they remained together on the rooftop garden. Below them, lights began to illuminate the sprawling metropolis, each one a reminder of lives being lived, stories being written, futures being shaped by choices made in moments of both fear and courage. For Prisha, who had once run from a storm only to fall into unexpected arms, the journey from victim to survivor to thriver had been neither straight nor easy. There would be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt, more storms to weather. But now she faced them not alone, not in fear, but with the steadfast certainty that sometimes, running away from what hurts you leads you directly to what heals you. And in that healing, hard-won and precious, lies the most profound love story of all. Learning to love yourself enough to accept love from another,